Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game that I played in my most recent tournament against someone slightly higher rated than me. A little bit of context for this game. The tournament settings are 60 minutes with a delay of 5 seconds. So we have a decent amount of time. The ratings that you see there are our USCF ratings. So around 400 to 500 points higher than chesscom. By the way, this is round 3, and me and him are doing terribly. I have 0 out of 2, and my opponent also has 0 out of 2. Let's get into it. My opponent starts off the game with e4. A very reasonable move, most common move, and I play c6, which is the Caro-Kann defense, which I have decided to play for my next couple of tourneys. Hopefully I'll get like a Sicilian defense or maybe an e5 type play later in maybe like a couple months, but currently that is not the case. My opponent goes d4, I go d5. My opponent goes e5, which is the advanced variation, the variation that most people play in the Caro-Kann. And I decide to play the move bishop f5, which is the most logical move. Basically, the difference is, and the reason why bishop f5 makes most sense, is that bishop f5 here is because in the Caro-Kann, what you do is you are able to develop the bishop very, very quickly, and if you simply like play the move e6, now your bishop gets a little bit weaker and a little bit bad, and if you go for like c5 lines immediately, which do exist, in a lot of lines your bishop isn't able to develop as quickly, and you will be able to play e6, and eventually it will resemble a French defense, which is after e6, d4, d5, e5, and in this line, the trade-off is that black gets c5 immediately, and in the Caro-Kann we get the bishop developed. So we go for the bishop. Bishop f5. My opponent goes h4, which is the tall variation, and I have kind of started playing this line that I really enjoyed. Originally, I've been playing the move h6 a lot, which is, it's okay, but it's obviously worse, as you can see by the eval bar. My opponent goes g4, bishop e4, f3, bishop h7. All this has been played like a million times before, and eventually it's just e6. Ton of theory here, but I've been caught in a couple of these lines in the past, so I didn't want to play this again. And I've kind of stopped playing it, because I knew my opponent would probably have prepped this against me. And I decided to instead play the move h5, which I've played before. I played in another variation. Another game, sorry, not variation, another game. 2 videos ago against Evan Bates, which was a lot of fun, very fun game. I got a very nice position, and in this game I also really enjoyed what happened. My opponent decided to go with this move, a very interesting move, bishop to g5, and I don't have theory in this line. I don't claim to have theory in this line. I don't know any theory in this line. I'm just playing this because I find it fun, and the move here that gives black a slight advantage is this move queen b6, which would make a lot of sense, targeting the pawn, and after something like, I don't know, maybe, it's kind of tricky actually. I don't really know what white plays here. Maybe white has to play b3, and then you're going to get something like e6, knight d7, c5 in the future, and black kind of has everything they want in the Caro-Kann, which would be nice. I probably should have played like that, but I decided not to. I decided instead to play what I thought was natural, and I thought of this very interesting idea, which is this idea g6. And my idea is to eventually play bishop h6 to kick out the bishop. Then my knight goes there, my knight goes to to g4 or to f5, and I'm gonna have a nice life. I thought g6 was a very interesting move. The idea of g6 is never to fianchetto the bishop, because, I mean, look at that. What is my bishop doing there? Biting on 2 different pawns. The idea is to trade off the bishops. And I thought that was a very interesting plan. And eventually I can get my pieces out later. My opponent goes bishop d3. I thought for a little bit, the choice was kind of forced. I take on d3. Queen takes d3. It's just very normal stuff in the Caro-Kann, and probably what I could have played here, I probably could have played bishop h6. Actually, no, not here, because of e6. Right. Sorry. I thought for a little bit, and I now remember why I played the move I did. I have to prevent e6, because e6 is a problem. If my opponent is able to play the move e6, The issue here is that I can't take because I'm getting like ravaged. My position, I'm dead. I'm dead here. It's over. Game over. My king has to go to d7, and then like this pawn is gonna be weak forever. My opponent can probably just play like knight f3, try to come into e4. This is game over. Black has nothing here. I would never want to play this position. I would never want this on my worst enemy, unless I was playing them in a chess game. And yeah, e6 is a huge problem. If I don't take, he's going to take here, open up my king, and that's not the tall variation that I want to play right now. So instead of that, I thought for a little bit, and I really have two moves. I can either, well, two moves that do what I want them to do. I want to break away from this pin and stop e6, so obviously I need to move the queen, and it's either queen c8 or queen d7. And there's an argument to be made for both of them. Queen d7 is what I played in the game. It's a little more active. It keeps this out of the way, and it opens up my rook for future development. But the reason why it's a little bit tricky to decide between queen c8 and queen d7 is that after queen c8, my knight still has the d7 square, which it would like to develop to in the future. Like now my plan is e6, knight d7, c5. Whereas in the game, after queen d7, my knight is not going to have an easy time developing. I'll have to go to h6, probably to c7, and come around that way. And the e6 plan doesn't really work out now. I kind of have to give up on this because my knight isn't going to be able to come and help. So it's a bit of an issue. It's a bit of an issue. And yeah, I know that the eval bar is kind of screaming that white is better. But in the Carl Khan, white is kind of always better. There's never really... This is a really hard advantage to really exploit, because if you play normal moves, which my opponent does, he plays knight f3, which makes a lot of sense. Simply developing a knight, maybe you're going to castle. Black is playing some weird stuff. Black is playing some very, very strange stuff, and some stuff that shows in the thumbnail of this video, where I'm able to play this move knight to a6, right? Very, very logical, right? Because my queen is guarding that d7 square, and the knight needs to develop somehow. It's going to e6. This is the point. It's going to e6. I'm going to target this. Maybe I play c5 in the future, but probably not. And in all likelihood, I'm probably going to try and trade off my dark sword bishop, get something like this, get this knight to f5, and this is the position that I want. But it's funny because after the move a3, which is a waste of time, by the way, a3 doesn't do anything. He was scared of knight to b4. That's such a phantom threat. I don't even know why he played this. Honestly, a3 is just a huge overcommitment, and you're not gonna play b4. I'm very, very. I really think a3 is a very bad move. And I'm happy to say that I responded correctly. Now, what I need to do is develop the other knight to the edge of the board and go knight to h6 with the idea to go to f5. I could have gone bishop h6. Yes, I could have gone bishop h6. But the issue with bishop h6 is that, okay, he simply develops. And if I take, I was thinking that he was going to take with the g-pawn. And now my knight doesn't have these squares. I'm going to have to go e6. But look at this nice hole. Look at this big hole, this big juicy hole for him to come into, which could be just a huge problem. Like, for example, white's best move here is g4, already winning the game. I'm going to lose a pawn. Probably have to go knight e7 and just sack it. This is just not entirely lose a pawn, but this pawn is going to be lost in the long run. This is what I mean. And my position is really bad here. My position is terrible. Even actually, what about this move? G6. No, not really. I thought that was interesting, trying to clearance sacrifice over here, but no, that move doesn't really work. Instead, after knight h6, which I kind of have to play, I'm simply coming over here and I'm arguing, okay, if you take my knight, well, now my bishop is developed, I have the bishop, I should be better. But pretty simple stuff. Instead, my opponent castles. Pretty reasonable, but now you don't have the pressure with the h-file, so it's not that much of a problem. And I'm simply going to play the rest of my moves like pretty normally. I go knight f5, and I'm really liking my position. I'm actually really liking my position. I have pressure here and here. I don't care what the Indus says. I don't care what the Indus says. It's plus 0.3. Plus 0.3 is nothing in this position. I have pressure here and here. This knight has this excellent square on e6 to go to, where it pressures this pawn. c5 is on the way. Maybe I can castle queen side. I might play bishop h6 at some point. I'm really liking my position. E6 is also moved, but then you have to think about bishop f6. So it's interesting. It's an interesting position, and I'm, on all honesty, I think black is having more fun than white here. But my opponent is still playing normal moves. He goes rook e1. Okay, very normal. He's trying to play e6 again. We gotta be scared of e6. Let's say we do anything. I don't know. This move is probably kind of natural. We got the move e6. Right? And after fe6, yes, I'm losing a pawn in the short term. Actually, this is a bad example of bishop g7. I can't think of a good example here. That's tough. It's tough to make a good example here. Maybe bishop h6 is a decent example. Yeah, I think so. Because after e6, fe6, now my opponent's going to get knight e5, which is a problem. And this is the idea of e6. And I have to watch out for that. But instead, of course, I know what I'm doing. I play knight c7. Yes, you can still play e6. You can still play e6, and you can make an argument that knight e5 is very powerful. But, of course, I calculated this. At the end of the day, I thought knight e5 wasn't actually much of anything, because I can simply play queen d6, and one might scare you, like, okay, maybe he has some, like, vague idea in the future to try and line up the bishop here, but I can always take. I can always take here. I can't draw arrows. Take here, and there's nothing. This isn't anything. This isn't anything. The knight's defended. Oh no, so much pressure. Oh no, so much pressure. That's so scary. And I'm completely fine. I'm completely fine. So my opponent can't play e6 anymore, and he instead plays a very natural move. He goes with c4. But already, black has achieved equality, and that plus 0.7 that we saw earlier is gone. It's gone. I don't really have to think very long on this either. Computer gives a couple of options, but I thought the option was pretty much clear. I thought that if I didn't take on c4, there would be some problems, because he might even clamp down here, or he can open up this position. It's a kind of an either or, but I thought that I had to take on c4, which I played in the game, because if I didn't take on c4, let's say I play, well, e6 would be a bad move. Let's say I play, like, I don't know, random move a6. I thought that c5 is really an issue. Like, this is kind of scary, and it's not like I can get rid of this either. Like, b6 is never a thing. Even if my pawn was on a7, b6 is never a thing because b4 comes. And I thought that black was actually really cramped down. Like, if I play e6, my position is honestly already kind of dead. For example, e6, as you can see, the advantage kind of balloons. But instead, after c4, I take on c4. My opponent, of course, recaptures with the queen, and I simply complete my knight's positioning. I put my knight on e6. Very natural. The knight's on e6 now, and life is good. My opponent goes rook d1. Okay, yeah, reasonable. He's trying to play this. Do I like that he's doing that? No, I don't like that he's doing that. You know what I especially don't like about that? That he's doing it while he's also attacking my knight. So I thought for a little bit, Computer gives bishop h6 as a viable option. Always a move that to be considered, but I didn't think about it here. I didn't really think about it here. I thought maybe he would have d5 at some point, trying to open up some attack, but maybe, yeah, bishop h6 would have been a better option. But I instead play this move knight takes g5, which I thought was very natural. And my idea is that whatever he takes back with, I'm just going to play e6, and now there's no more d5, and your rook is, like, stupid now, which I thought was pretty decent. It gives white actually a very serious advantage here, which is kind of strange. He has this move, pawn takes g5, h takes g5, which I was looking at, but I ended up just kind of thinking that I would figure it out. Like, I would play e6, you play knight c3 with the idea to go knight e4, knight f6, right? I just played bishop e7, say knight e4, And I can do something here. Like, I can probably just castle long. It's not the end of the world. If he comes in here, I mean, I can just take it. And it's not that big of a problem. At least from a far away distance, I thought it wasn't that big of a problem. Let's take with the G-pawn. And, I mean, I have play on the king side now, right? So I thought that this wasn't that bad for me. But computer really doesn't like this for black, because maybe this is a weakness already. And let's say play anything. Let's say play a6. What does he play? Oh, he's already starting to attack. He either plays knight g5 or he plays b4 or rook ac1. And it seems like white has pretty easy play here. Knight g5, yes, this looks like a free pawn. It's just not. It's just not. Like, he can probably take on f7. And yeah, this is not good. This is not good for black, because this pawn is weak. This pawn is kind of weak, but not really. But the problem is this clamp here. This pawn is 2 squares away from queening. White has the d file. It's not good. It's not good. Rook d8, probably queen a4 or something, trying to take control. Either way, that is to say that my opponent did not do that. My opponent ended up taking with the knight, which is not the right move. And yeah, my plan is very simple. I go e6, and black is better. Black is just better here. This pawn is hanging. I thought my opponent would have to go back to f3, which doesn't happen in the game. Very interesting. I thought my opponent would have to go back to f3, defend everything. I would have a tempo to do whatever I want. Probably play bishop e7. And then it's kind of a toss-up about where I put my king. I either put it on the king side or the queen side. Both places actually make a decent bit of sense, but probably the king side. It's a little bit safer, but I do lose attacking potential over there. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting little conversation. But bishop e7, and I would be doing better, but my opponent doesn't do that. Instead, my opponent has this very interesting idea and sacrifices the pawn. First knight e4. Yes, I can't take right away. Obviously, let's not hang our queen. But after bishop e7, my opponent doesn't defend the pawn. My opponent just lets me have it. Bishop e7 is a very reasonable move, by the way. It's just normal. It's just normal. It stops this. Now this isn't a problem. This pawn is a weakness. I see the split pawns, right? And of course, knight here. There are 3 pieces defending that square. But my opponent decides to go with knight c5, which is another very good move. And the advantage balloons again to -2. I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. But how am I doing really well? It's not that easy. It's really not that easy. The line here, I didn't even look at. I have to admit, I didn't even look at this line. The move I played was very quickly bishop takes c5, because I didn't think that there was anything. There's a couple of moves that work. Queen c7 makes some sense. It's only -1 here, but it's a move that makes some sense. I of course looked at that. The move b5 is one that I didn't look at. It also is -1, but I mean, I don't know why I'm doubling my pawns. Like, I just I couldn't believe this for black. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. My opponent's knight has to come out, and then their pawns are weak. It makes a lot of sense. The real move here, the real move that kind of gets everything going, is this crazy move queen d5, which to me from a distance just looked like it lost a pawn. Of course, I get this pawn back in the future, but I thought that my b pawn was a little more of a problem. After queen d5, c d5, knight takes b7. Actually, black is winning here. Rook b8, knight a5. I just take on b2. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to be up a pawn. I'm going to be up a pawn because this pawn is going to be lost. My opponent probably has to bring the knight, probably has to go knight d2, sorry, to bring this knight out. Because the knight's about to be trapped, actually, which is a little bit terrifying. And at the end of the day, I can just take this. I can just take on h4, and I'm up a pawn, but it's worse than that because I have this pressure over on the king side, this pressure towards the center, and life is really good if you're playing black. I didn't see that. I just took because I'm a human being, but that would have been a nice way to win the game. I didn't see that at all. Instead, queen c5. Of course, you can't take with the pawn because you hang the rook. I simply take on h4, and I'm just saying, okay, I'm up a pawn. Do your worst. The issue here is that his worst is actually pretty bad. His worst is not good. my opponent goes knight c3. Oh, which makes sense. Which makes a lot of sense, right? His idea is knight e4 and trying to exploit my weak dark squares here, right? That's what I thought he would do. That's what I thought he would do, but it's still. I thought it was still very manageable for black, and I thought that after like he gets the knight over to like f6 or something, I thought black is just fine, and the knight doesn't really guard anything, and he can't go to d6. So I'm always gonna bring the knight back to f5, like before he goes to d6. And basically what I did, I played queen e7, which I thought was a very natural move, offering a queen trade. If you take, black is clearly better. Because it doesn't matter now that the knight is coming in. Without queens on the board, there's not really any attack. I just come to f5. If you go to f6, there's just nothing here. There's just nothing here. Your knight actually attacks nothing, which is pretty funny. And black is clearly winning. But instead of that, my opponent drops the queen back to the c4 square, which made sense to me at the time. And I thought, and I tried to find a way to make everything work. I thought about this move. This is the best move, queen g5, just simply threatening mate. But I didn't see anything that was a problem. Like, okay, he goes g3. I didn't really see what the big issue was for white. Like, okay, knight f3 is the main line, king g2. What happens? I go queen f5. Oh, what is this? I actually don't know what is going on here. It doesn't look like. I guess I stopped knight e4 and also my knight defends that square. But is that it? Okay, let's follow the main line for a little bit. Queen e2, right? h4 makes a lot of sense. You can't take because of this. Okay, if takes, obviously I win. And I guess the computer just says that I have a really big attack. Queen e4, hg is also nice. You still can't take because of like rook h2. That's really interesting. Okay, I didn't see this at all. I have to admit. But okay. No, I don't think I would have found this. I don't think I would have found this line. But this is what it is. I just thought, okay, I don't do anything, like the knight's gonna come to e4 anyways. I just thought, it's not anything that I want. I don't really like this position very much. I don't think I'm doing anything on the king side, but I guess I am. Cool. Instead, I thought for a little bit. I could have played knight f5, which is also a very reasonable move. I was thinking about that, but I ended up castling. Which is a miss. Because of queen g5, and it's equal even though black is up a pawn, which is kind of interesting. My opponent goes knight e4, right, of course, very reasonable. I go knight f5, stopping knight d6 ideas, and here I just evaluated, okay, if he's not going to be able to do anything to me right now or win back his pawn, I'm just going to win the game. I'm just pretty easily going to win the game, and I didn't think that he had anything. My opponent goes rook d3 though, which is a very decent idea. And the idea here is that my opponent is going to come over to the h-file, bring the other rook, and try to like sacrifice and like mate me or something crazy. But black has moves still, and I just thought, okay, I go king g7 now. And knight f6 doesn't come with check. I'm always going to play this move. Rook h8 is an idea. Rook a d8 is an idea. Got to get this rook involved, right? And I mean, I just couldn't believe that black was worse here, or it was equal. I just thought at least black has like a minus 0.5 advantage here, because I just didn't see anything for white. My opponent goes rook h3 though, which is a big miss. He can't do this. What he had to play was a very strange move. He had to play g3. Oh, and the idea is king g2 and trying to get over like this. Okay, very interesting. It's kind of instructive that you just kind of have the time to do that, but it really doesn't seem like it. I'm not going to go too in depth there. My opponent instead goes rook h3, and black is just comfortable. Black has a comfortable advantage. I thought about a couple moves. I thought about rook a d8, which made a lot of sense. I didn't think about the best move, queen d7. Didn't think about this at all. But ended up just playing a pretty natural move because I was going to play it anyway. I just played rook h8, just like super defending my king, and I'm just saying, okay, now there's never any sacrifices. I know g4 was an idea here in the future. Yeah, g4 was actually the main idea of this move. He wants g4. He wants to go knight f6, g4, and if I take, he's gonna have like a checkmate in some lines. This is his main idea, but I didn't think that this was anything. So after rook h3, I simply played rook h8, and now, I mean, there's no mate ever on that square, and I'm just saying that black is better. My opponent goes rook d1, pretty reasonable move. I bring my other rook a d8. I just simply developing. My opponent goes f4. I don't understand this move. I thought at the very least you're gonna go f3 if you want to play that. Actually, f3 would hang a fork. Come on, we're not. It's not amateur hour here. But yeah, I don't actually understand f4 at all. There's a lot of moves that give black like problems for black. Like I thought rook d3 was one, rook dd3 was one, maybe even queen c3, trying to reroute the queen over here in some lines. There's a lot of interesting lines here, but in all honesty, I still think black has a good advantage. Instead, f4, and f4 is just a big weakening of the position. Now he has this line open against his king, and I'm immediately able to start targeting that. I play the best move here. I'm very proud of this. I go queen c7, which is a very nice move. I'm going after this pawn in the long run. I want to go queen b6 and start skewering this and start putting more pressure, bring the other rook, right? And it looks like it's getting bad. It looks like it's starting to get bad. And if my rook isn't on f8, right? If my rook isn't on f8, then there's no mate here. There's no mate here because my king actually is always able to run, which is very, very nice. My opponent goes knight g5. And here, actually, I have a pretty nice way to just like completely win the game. I have rook d5, which is a very, very good move. By the way, the threat of knight g5, if I play anything, is queen takes pawn, which is a very nice idea. After takes, actually black is still better here, which is crazy. I guess because of rook d4, right? And then it's just an equal position. But yeah, that's the idea. You want to win 2 pawns and get the queen back. Got to be tactically vigilant. Rook d5 is a very, very nice move. It simply cuts off the queen's idea to this pawn, and I have doubling up opportunities in the future. If I can draw arrows, I have doubling up opportunities in the future. This pawn is just a huge, huge weakness in the position. I have c5 on the way, which is a nice move, and it's probably rough. My opponent has to go b4. I'm winning. But instead, I played a little bit more softly. Same idea. I go rook d7 though, which is the same idea, basically saying, okay, after takes, my queen is now defended, so you would simply be down a knight at the end of this, right? Obviously, black can't play like this. I mean, white can't play like this. So rook d7, I thought this was very, very nice, and my opponent shocked me here. My opponent played a move that I had also been calculating, but I calculated it to be not working. I calculated this line g4, this move g4, which I thought was a very interesting try. And the idea is to like bring the queen over or the rook over and try to checkmate me over here before my king is able to stop it. And yeah, it's a free pawn. It's a free pawn. That's what my opponent played during the game. I was calculating this for a long while, and I was thinking, I was trying to find a way to make it not work, because it's pretty scary, because my opponent is at least going to have a perpetual check at the end of this if I like play lazily, like queen probably e2. He's going to come over here, he's going to check me, he's going to check me here, and at the end of the day, I saw these lines where the queen goes on h8, the king comes up here, and then I just get perpetualized with queen f6, and there's no escape for the king. There's just no escape for the king, and I was a little bit worried about this. So I was trying to figure out a line. I found a way to stop this with this interesting idea to go knight h6 at the end of it. I want to go knight h6, and then I can probably start to try and bring my queen over, or my rook over for that matter, and try to get something working over here, and then I can actually use the h-file against him. And that all happened. My opponent goes g4, and it doesn't work. I have to take. If I don't take, it's just very slightly better for black. So I have to take. My opponent takes my rook. I recapture the king. My opponent goes queen e2. Pretty reasonable stuff. I think for a while here, I have two main options. I can go g3 if I want to try and stop this. But this doesn't actually help at all. Like queen g4 and like I'm just kind of making a weakness on g3 now. Or I had this other idea, a separate idea, to go knight g7 and knight up to h5 that I kind of just thought of just right away, like while I saw this position on the board. Probably, this is probably one of the best ideas in the position. Let's see, knight g7 immediately. Yeah, minus 1.6. Instead, I actually played the best move, which is kind of nice. I played king g7, making sure that this doesn't come with check. And, of course, the idea is knight h6, like I just told you. Now, my opponent goes queen takes g4, which is not a good move. Yes, it's a free pawn. And no, this is not a fork. Queen h4 and perpetual. But here, I'm okay. And this gives me another tempo to do basically whatever I want. Probably here, what I should have done is gone rook d8 and said, okay, here, I'm getting my rook involved now. There's nothing anymore. That would have been really smart. Computer also thinks I can take, which is nice. I didn't see this, but I was always looking at these lines. Queen b6. If I take immediately with the knight, actually it's a draw after either one, and I get perpetualized. But yeah, I was trying to play for something like queen b6 in the future, but I didn't really understand it. I didn't figure it out here. I could have done that. Instead, I simply played a move that I knew was okay. I played knight h6, right? The line. I'm hitting the queen now, and now my queen is going to come back, defend everything, and life is going to be good. Yeah, that's right, but not what I should have done. Not what I should have done. I probably should have realized that I had the time to go rook d8. If I didn't see rook d4, which I didn't in the game, I probably should have played rook d8. Instead, after knight h6, I'm still winning. My opponent goes queen h3, and I simply have the time here. I go queen d8. I'm bringing my queen over here. I'm going to put my knight back on f5, and then trade everything, and life is going to be good. He goes queen c3, defending this pawn, because I'm also attacking this. Queen d8 is kind of a double-pronged move. And now I just put my knight back on f5. Attacking this pawn. My opponent goes back to h3, but now queen h8. And the attack is gone. There's no more perpetualization. I don't even know if that's a word, but I like to think it is. Yeah, I'm just better. I'm up a pawn, but it's kind of worse than that because he has this huge weakness here, this weakness here, and really my opponent has to trade queens and try for something like rook here or something, trying to get over here. But there's nothing. I can even play knight h6 again. Which is pretty funny, but instead of that, my opponent kind of just loses immediately. Instead he goes queen c3, trying to keep some play on the board, but as you can see from the eval bar, this is just bad because now my queen gets into the position. Queen h4, queen h5 is slightly better, but who cares? Queen h4, I'm getting in here, maybe this check to trade queens and get my knight kind of active, or I can keep the queens on the board, try to trade rooks, and win the endgame in like a much more like clean fashion. My opponent goes queen f3, but that just loses a pawn. Rook d4, and I'm threatening this pawn, threatening the infiltration, so he has to trade. But now, I mean, I'm up 2 pawns, knight f5, and I'm gonna win more. Queen g3, king f1, I go knight e3, which I thought was nice. King e2, and I go knight d5, plugging this hole. It's really this cleanup process right now, but still got to be accurate. Can't let him have counterplay. My opponent goes knight e4, but this simply loses the pawn on f4 with check, and then I'm able to pick up the knight with this nice little fork. Of course, if my opponent went here, I simply have queen f3 picking up the knight anyway, and this move doesn't work due to a checkmate, which I saw. Instead, king d1, and I'm picking up the knight, and really my opponent can resign here. My opponent could have probably resigned a couple moves ago, but he plays on, it's fine, it's his right. He goes b4, I'm able to trade the queens with some nice timed checks, and this position is obviously waiting for black, since I'm up 3 pawns and a knight. This pawn is going to be lost. King c2 takes, a4, king f6, b5, and cb5, and my opponent finally resigns the game, and I get the win. Another thing to mention, my opponent was low on time here. My opponent ended up getting down to around 4 minutes, and I was at around 5 towards the end. But um, yeah, whatever. I was winning anyway. So this was a fun game. I hope you guys enjoyed. That's all I have for you today. Um, if you did, remember, if you did enjoy, remember to like, subscribe to all the normal things the YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, that's it. Good evening and good night.